Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Wildcard Rewind. Even though the season is over, we've still got plenty of content coming at you. Today, we are joined by an excellent guest. We got Lee Wakefield here, and we're going to talk about, hey, guess what? The AFC West. I've been looking forward to this one for a while.
I just want to rewind to when we were young at heart. Back to all those good times. Take me back to the start.
Oh, yes, it's Monday. I'm back. Very sorry to miss last week, but it is great to be back on the show with Paul. Unfortunately, no Hannah with us for the next little while. Actually, she won't be appearing, but I'm sure she's listening. So, Hannah, hope all is going well with you. And me and Paul miss you, but we've got a great guest this week to fill in. We got Lee Wakefield. Lee, pleasure to have you on the show. How are you doing?
Great to meet you both. Great to be here. Thanks for having me as well, by the way. But no, looking forward to talking to my AFC West. Be great.
Absolutely. And of course, we got our faithful stalwart, Paul Bicken, in the house as well. Paul, you got a shiny new microphone. You got a headset. Things are looking up.
Mate, do you know what? I've had this microphone for about 12 months, and then we were both on at about 10 to 8, and you were like, oh, I'm thinking of getting a new microphone. It's like, oh, look, I've got a shiny new microphone. And you were like, well, let's set it up and have a play with it. And you were like, it sounds better. So here we are. We've got a new, I say new, it's the kids' gaming headset and a new shiny microphone that's finally come out of the box. So
yeah, absolutely.
And what am I going to do? What am I going to do with my new headset? Oh yeah, I'm going to listen to the Mags bang on about the Chiefs for the next hour. And how
absolutely.
Good they are. Super Bowl champions.
Super Bowl champions. That's right. 2 minutes is the mark this week for when that is mentioned. Lee, of course, before we get stuck into some AFC West, do you want to tell people who do you support? Where can they find you online, and what kind of stuff do you get up to?
So I'm a Chargers fan, obviously here to talk about the AFC West, but I'll be, showing some decent amount of Chargers bias. I don't know if I'll be able to really match you because obviously we don't have a lot of room to talk over here when it comes to the Chiefs. But much like our on-field battles, I'm sure we'll have a good battle with some words this evening. But yeah, I'm a big NFL draft guy, so a lot of my content revolves around the NFL draft. As you can see on screen, my handle is @Wakefield90 on Twitter. A lot of my, like I say, it's a busy time of year for me. I was formerly of full 10 yards, not writing for those guys at the moment, stepped away from that sort of thing. But you can find me in a few places at the moment. I'm writing for With the First Pick. I've also been doing some guest stuff over at The Touchdown as well. Some great stuff, not only for the NFL draft that you can find over there, but for college football and also the NFL. And also contributed towards the Jet Suite and Draft Guide, which will be coming out in the next few days as well. So yeah, been a busy boy, been up to a lot of things. And yeah, like I say, hopefully it all will come to fruition over the next few weeks as the draft draws closer.
Amazing. That all sounds great. So I'm sure we'll pitch some NFL draft questions your way during the show, since we got someone who's deep into that at the minute. That'll be great to have, actually. But we're going to get started with your Chargers. So Lee, what we're going to do is we're going to pitch it to you to start with. We're going to talk about what do you think went really well for the Chargers. Then myself or Paul will chat about that for a bit, and then we'll pitch it to you again. And it'll be, what do you think the Chargers need to do next year to improve? So, well, let's start with the good. What went well for the 10-7 Chargers this past year?
Well, first and foremost, take it sort of starting at the end. We made the playoffs, which was obviously a return to the playoffs after a few years away. I think it was really important for the team as a whole, coaching staff, and most importantly, Justin Herbert, who I can actually see over your shoulder there, surprisingly, considering you're a Chiefs fan.
Yeah, Horse Herbert arrived. He was meant to be the same size as Mahomes and Trevor Lawrence, but he came in absolutely huge. So I've got Horse Herbert. He's a good guy.
Yeah, that was obviously really important for him to have some playoff experience. I thought that 12 months ago when we almost limped into the playoffs and missed out, obviously, on the last almost play of the season, the regular season. I just thought, well, we're probably not going to make the Super Bowl, but it's one of those things where it's really important for Justin Herbert to get some playoff experience, even if it's just a loss, even in the first round. But just to say that he's been there, he gets that experience, and obviously he's got that now, so you can look forward towards that in the next 12 months to looking to build on that. Obviously, the good thing as well is obviously we made it, but we made it with a lot of injuries as well. Ripped to shreds, not a lot of offensive weapons for sure. So it says that if the injury bug doesn't strike us again, but it seems to be a yearly tradition in Los Angeles. It made me think that we can maybe go on and do bigger and better things. But yeah, there was a lot of good, even though it didn't feel like a very fun season. I've since watched every game back, and it actually was a better season than we were kind of made to believe in the real time. But in the time, it didn't feel very fun because you got Rashawn Slater going down in week 3, and like I say, almost weekly big injuries coming up. But to say that we made it, and we got to halftime at the Jags looking like we were cruising through. If things fall a different way and we play a bit of a different game, then, it can turn out to be an even better season. So, I think in hindsight, looking back with a clear head and not kind of being in the season, it was a better season than maybe it should have been. And that's always a positive to be looking forward, especially when you've got a superstar quarterback who's going to be paid a lot of money in the coming days and weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're spot on that. Paul, do you have anything else to add on what the Chargers did well last year?
Do you know what? I completely forgot. You just mentioned it, Lee, about the Jags, and I've just literally just gone and had a look at it, and I completely forgot about it. It was that game where you were like 27 something up at half time, weren't you? And in the second half, I'm looking, they put 24 points past you in the second half, and you put 3 against them. And so I kind of feel that you're right with what you're saying. There's a lot of good. You made it to the playoffs. You did get unlucky. You know what I mean? I know, is that unlucky or was that just a bad second half? But actually, I'm looking at some of the teams that you beat. It's I do feel like you've put up a decent season. And it's a lot to build on. It is a lot to build on. But yeah, I think you're right. I think both sides of the ball, you actually look competitive, and it's just hopefully you'll get a bit of a easier schedule next year that you don't come up against some of these difficult teams so often,
Yeah, I don't think the schedule is going to get much easier, obviously, as a second place team, but it's one of those things where you're in an AFC now, which is going to be an absolute bloodbath. You're in a division with the Chiefs. It's like, almost like the playoffs is the AFC playoffs almost. That's almost the Super Bowl, the AFC Championship, as it might turn out to be in the next few years, because there is so many good young quarterbacks in there. It's not going away anytime soon as well. So, it's one of those things where if, and I'm sure Mags will let me have this, the games that we have with the Chiefs are generally pretty close, even if we come out on the wrong side of it, more often than not, unfortunately. But you've got to sort of play the best and beat the best to be the best, So if we can test ourselves, a couple of times against Patrick Mahomes, and I'm sure there'll be plenty of matchups against the likes of Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, and some of the young guys who might enter the conference. Trevor Lawrence, obviously, we saw a couple of times last year. It's one of these things where you've got to go through these trials and get there. So I think it's one of those things where you look at the AFC, and I don't see it as a bad thing. It's going to be some huge games, which as a fan is great to look forward to. But obviously, if you're coming out on top of those games, it can give you every confidence going into the playoffs to repeat and go all the way.
Yeah, I think one thing for the Chargers I kind of noticed last year was, I don't know if this meant because obviously follow a lot of people and play a lot of fantasy and close it in those kind of worlds, but I think Justin Herbert is being severely underrated for just how good that he is. He was second in the league in passing yards last year, throwing to a really injured, set of receivers and no real significant tight end speak. I know Gerald Everett's okay, right? Yeah. But he didn't really have a lot of weapons outside of Austin Eckler, and still, came second in the league in passing yards. That's an incredibly good season, and of course, getting the team to the playoffs as well. I think people are still maybe, the hype on Herbert was obviously way up here when he started, and it took a bit of a dip last year, and I thought that was a little bit harsh. Is that what you're seeing as well, Lee? You still obviously full faith in Justin Herbert?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think it was taking about 12 months, and you're probably talking about top 3 in the NFL in a lot of people's minds, not just our minds, but of Josh Allen, Mahomes, and Herbert in some order, probably with Mahomes on top, and then pick between the other two as you see fit. But I think not only Justin Herbert and the Chargers, having that horrendous loss in the playoffs that's taken a hit to his reputation. Unfairly to him, it's not his fault that the defense gave up all these points, as Paul was saying. And I think also the fact that Joe Burrow has been so good over the past couple of years has kind of pushed him into that sort of upper bracket as well. And it's one of those things, isn't it, where we're on Twitter, each of us, and we know what the environment's like there. You can't sort of have a discussion that's with nuance, and everything's binary, isn't it? So you either hate Herbert or you love him. You can't sort of like any one of these two. Any two of these quarterbacks equally. You've got to pick between one because that's the environment that you see on there. So I think he's right up there, and I think he'll continue to be right up there with all the names that I just said. Maybe plus a couple of others that will kind of push themselves into that bracket, in the AFC, and then obviously you've got to take into account when the NFC comes back in a year or two with some quarterbacks that will go over there. So he's the dude. He's a golden ticket that the Chargers have got to take advantage of because he's a Super Bowl quarterback. If we can make everything happen around him and get a bit lucky, maybe.
Yeah, completely agree. And then what we're going to do now, Lee, is pitch it back to you just in terms of what needs to go better next year. Obviously, you talk about the injuries. Even Justin Herbert himself had that rib injury, right? That held him back. So obviously the injuries. And what else do you think the Chargers need to do next year to improve? What do they need to address in the draft? You got anybody in mind? One of those kind of things.
So start off with the offense. So first of all, we've got to find some speed. That's just the one thing we're missing, right? And obviously, as a Chiefs fan, you'll know that speed kills, and you've been a huge proponent of that in your offense. And I think we've done a couple of things. We've obviously brought in Kellen Moore to replace Joe Lombardi. I think it's a pretty pedestrian offense with Joe Lombardi, a pretty an offense that was dated, more so than anything. And I think Kellen Moore kind of brings us into the 21st century a little bit. I think he'll kind of play with more speed, and he'll play with more 12 personnel, which is obviously much more of a modern facet of the game. The Chiefs obviously showed that, the Eagles showed that, heavier personnels and things like that are very, very in vogue. And when you've got the personnel to be quite multiple out of that, that's a big deal. So I think we'll kind of see a lot more than that, which, like I say, will bring the Chargers offense up to speed. Finding some speed, like I say, first and foremost, maybe in the mid rounds of the draft, and finding, like you said before, a tight end and sorting out the Austin Eckler situation, or finding some sort of deputy behind him that will kind of give us a decent run game. So just putting pieces around just but I think the line is really, really exciting. I don't think that really can be improved too much. It's young, it's talented, but just putting those weapons around him, and then obviously flipping over to defense, it's just got to be better. You've just got to have more playmakers, make more plays, get more splash plays, sacks, turnovers, that sort of thing, and just really kind of fill out the depth. And I think that's what we've got to do. Obviously, we've not had that sort of big splashing free agency that we had 12 months ago, but we've got to find that depth in the draft, I think, over the next few weeks, and just fill out that roster, because, like I say, the top end talent is right there. We've got the wide receivers, we've got McKeenan Allen, Mike Williams. You just got to put more around them. Got a good defensive line, got the quarterback, got some playmakers on defense. Some Joey Bosa, some Derwin James, a couple of other guys. But it's got to be kind of more sort of throughout the whole roster. So I think that building up the depth and finding some key pieces on offense is really the key.
I'm gonna pitch two words to you for the offense. What do you think about Jalen Hyatt for the Chargers?
So obviously, like I say, it addresses that speed aspect, doesn't it? Whether he's going to be in the right range for where we're picking, I think he's a bit too rich at 21, where we're going to be picking. Whether we trade back, I don't know. That's obviously been muted a little bit over the past week or so. I think we can find a guy that does that sort of thing in the mid rounds. Marvin Mims, Tyler Scott, a couple of other guys, Trey Palmer from Nebraska. I think we can find that sort of vertical stem receiver, that sort of go ball guy, yak guy in the third round or so, around that kind of area. I don't think we need to go by. That said, though, Jalen Hyatt's a good player. He definitely will fulfill that role for someone, and he'll be really successful. I just hope he doesn't go to the Chiefs, which is one of my things that I really don't want to happen. At 31 there in the draft, I think that could be a landing spot for him.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny, like both teams kind of looking for that kind of field stretcher, and you want to improve on, your Jalen Guytons and people like that you've had in the past. You need a bit more about them than him. So yeah, I love that as improvements. Very like, call it as you see it, which I like. Sometimes I'd be like, we don't need to improve anything. Like we got this. So yeah, it's there are definitely some things to address, but yeah, that Chargers team is like one of those teams like. It's almost, I don't know if people listening will understand, like they kind of have a bit of like Spurs about them if you watch any like English Premier League, right? It's like on their day they could beat anybody but can all just fall apart as well sometimes. So I think, just the more pieces that you guys add, the better it'll be. And I certainly don't like having to play the Chargers too much, because it's, they're always so close, those games, and very competitive. So the next thing we're going to do is just ask you, Leah, and Paul as well, and myself, do you think the Chargers will improve on their 10-7 record next year? And who do you think their MVP for next season will be? Paul, let's pitch it to you first.
Oh wow, put me on the spot here, mate.
Yeah.
Do you know what we mention this every week? We do this every week with all the teams that we've done, and it's so difficult because we're going to sit here, and if we say yes, we're going to predict the Chargers to have an 11-win game season. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And by any means to anyone, that's quite a big thing, isn't it? An 11-win season is a big thing, and so I don't know if I could sit here and say, yeah, I think they're going to improve. I think they are going to be a better team, and I think they're going to be playoff bound and everything like that. So, but do you know what? No, I'm gonna say no. I don't think they're going to get 10 wins. I don't think they're going to get 10 wins. I think that division's going to be a feisty one next year.
Yeah,
and I think it's going to be a tough one to better that record. So I'm going to say no. And I'm going to say their MVP is going to be Justin Herbert. I think I kind of agreed with what you were saying earlier about how he's quite underrated, isn't he? But he is an incredible player, and you watch him play, and he can change anything. He's the Harry Kane of the NFL world, seeing as we're comparing him to Spurs, So he's the Harry Kane. He's on his day, he could be absolutely phenomenal, So I'm going to say no. They're not going to better their record, and Harry Kane, aka Justin Herbert's going to be their MVP.
Love it. Lee, what do you think?
So it's a tough one, isn't it? Because it can go either way, obviously, without saying too many more obvious things than that. But I think when I look at the top players of the roster, and when I look at the roster and on paper, you think, oh, this must be like 12, 13 potentially win team, with the ceiling being there. Then it comes down to it, and then it's like you say, you're hoping that things go for you, that the plans that you put in place fall into place, and then the injury bug doesn't hit.
Yeah,
it's tough. I mean, we got the schedule is, like I say, pretty tough. I just pulled it up as Paul was speaking there. Obviously you got the AFC West to contend with, which is obviously a couple of games against the Chiefs, which is difficult. Going to Denver, we've got a dreadful record in Denver, so that's 3 tough games as it is. I think the Raiders are in a bit of flux. I'm not really sure what they're doing, so maybe they might be the bottom team in the division. But the AFC West plays the NFC North, which is again a division that's got a lot of change happening. Obviously, with the Aaron Rodgers situation, Detroit being the favourite, so you may be looking at maybe a couple of wins out of that, but don't know for sure. But then the other division that we'll play in the AFC is the AFC East, which obviously you've got the Dolphins and the Bills, and obviously the resurgent Jets as well. So it's looking super, super tough. We've also got the Ravens, the Cowboys, and the Titans on the schedule. So it's a tough one, So it's one of those things where you look. I think we can come out of some of these games with wins, like these tough wins. Like I said before, you've got to go through these trials to be one of the best teams, and I think we're going to be right there. I think Paul was not wrong in what he said before, where you're looking at one of the best teams in the NFL if everything goes well. But you're going to drop some of those games, aren't you? You're not going to go 17-0 with the schedule. So I'm going to probably say no as well. I'm going to maybe say that they might go 10-7, but be a better team, and might be more of a potent player in the playoffs, I would say.
Love it.
Do you know what, Lee? I can't believe I'm the positive one. I think you're going to do better. Just because you're right.
Comes against the Chiefs as well,
Let's not go crazy. But that's going to be interesting when the Chargers play the Lions. They can't both lose by 3. So that's going to be interesting, right? But I actually think you'll do better just because what you said, Lee, like the injury bug was so severe for you guys last year that I think if you get that, rub of the green, you get everybody on the field that's meant to be there. If you're going to address those holes at the draft, I just think you'll sneak a few more wins. It'll be hard fought, but it seems like every victory in the NFL right now is hard fought anyway. It doesn't matter who you're playing. So, yeah, I think you could end up. I wouldn't be shocked if you just went 10-7 again, actually. But yeah, I could see it being 11-6. Yeah, why not? So yeah, that's the Chargers covered. And now, guys, sit back, relax. We're going to talk about some Kansas.
Me and you could go now if you want, Lee.
So this is the moment that we've all been waiting for. Paul has been so excited about this, I think.
So excited.
Super Bowl champions, the Kansas City Chiefs. So we have the best player in the NFL, the best coach in the NFL, and something that I think maybe gets unsung by people who aren't Chiefs fans. We've got the best general manager in the NFL. Just an absolute phenomenal job. This was meant to be the rebuilding year, and you've seen Brett Veach was like, this is what a rebuild looks like in Kansas City, holding up, the Lombardi Trophy. Baller move, by the way. This is a team, is 10 rookies on this team last year that all stepped up, all did their part. This is the 5th youngest roster in the NFL that just went on to win a Super Bowl. That is, incredibly impressive. After a couple of people have gone, like, Chad Henne retired. Travis Kelce is the oldest player in this team right now, which is crazy. Like, he's 33. You usually have a couple of guys a bit older than that kind of hanging around. But yeah, Travis Kelce at 33 is the oldest player on the Kansas City Chiefs. You got George Karlaftis, Trent McDuffie, Leo Chanel, Sky Moore, even like Nick Bolton. They're 21 or 22 years old. Like, this is about as good as it can go in terms of this young core that's already successful, already experienced. I feel like the Chiefs are about 2 to 3 years ahead of even the schedule of dreams that they may have written up. I'm not sure if anyone really expected this rebuild to go so well. And the Chiefs have also added some nice players in free agency. Juwan Taylor, Charles Omenihu, Mike Edwards, fantastic player in Drew Tranquil, right, Lee?
Yeah, he's good. He's good. He's a sore one to lose, to be honest with you, especially to a division rival for sure. He'll be playing motivated for sure.
Yeah, so it's just like nice little players, and I think I could be wrong, but I am sure now that the players will be happy to come in on a team-friendly deal because they want to play with Patrick Mahomes, they want to play under Andy Reid. They're happy to take a bit less to chase that ring and try and get the Super Bowl win next to their name. It is a dream scenario, and I also just think that it's a really hard-working team. Like Andy Reid, I don't know, you guys probably don't watch any of the Chiefs behind the scenes stuff. Andy Reid's at his office in Arrowhead at about 4:30 every morning, and he's there till about 10 at night. How many other coaches think are doing that? Because I think it's very, very few. Like, he's just takes everything really seriously. Things like OTAs, teams don't. I don't know what the Cardinals or what the Chargers do for OTAs, but I know the Chiefs take it incredibly seriously. The hard work starts in the summer. You have other teams where the big players don't even turn up to OTAs. Patrick Mahomes runs his own separate to the Chiefs that everyone also goes to. So people put in the work. It's no coincidence that the Chiefs seemed ready and are so quick to make adjustments. I think Chad Henne's 97-yard drive against the Jags, that wasn't planned, the week of. That was done in the summer at OTAs. He was ready for that should that come up, which it did. So, like I said at the very start, I think we got the best player in the league. I think we got the best coach in the league and the best general manager in the league. But actually, the best thing about it is I think they're also arguably the hardest working player, coach, and general manager in the league. So, yeah, it's pretty awesome. I don't gonna lie. I'm not gonna lie, it's pretty good. Lee, what do you got to say about the Chiefs?
So obviously, I can't come in and deny a lot of the things that you've just said, to be honest with you, because obviously you've been there, you've proved that you've got the Lombardi trophies. So you remind me of myself 12 months ago, though, when I was looking at the Chargers roster thinking, we're definitely, this is it. We're going to be able to challenge the Chiefs. And then it all came crumbling down. So I'm promised myself throughout this offseason that I'm not getting bought into any of the hype, even when the schedule release comes out and it's amazing again. I'm not getting bought into any hype. I'm not talking up the Chargers this year. I'm just going to hope that they prove it on the field. There's going to be some regression from those rookies. I'm going to say that for sure, because, there's so many of them. They all pretty much contributed in some shape. That is going to, every rookie has some sort of progression at some point. I'm not saying it's on all come at the same time, of course, but we're going to get some regression. The injury bug doesn't seem to bite the Chiefs very much. I'm not going to, not going to say anything near what other teams seem to experience, which might be down to good strength and conditioning coaching and things like that. It might be down to other factors, which other teams don't buy into. But that can bite any point, right? Because sometimes some chaos factor comes in, and it's like, if Patrick Mahomes goes down, how much does that affect everything? Probably quite considerably, because like you say, he's the best player in the league. And again, going back to what I said about the Chargers schedule, it also applies to the Chiefs as well, right? Because you're playing the same sort of teams. Obviously, you're starting from a higher starting position, but you've still got to go through these teams as well. You know, like the Dolphins and the Bills and all the other teams that I mentioned as well, plus the division, the tough matchups that we've got. So, you know, I'm not going to say too much right now, but you know, there's things that can go wrong. There's definitely some pitfalls and some you know, things that you've got to navigate throughout the season. But like I said, hold my hands up, you are the best team in the league at the moment, and you know, you've got all the skill and the players and the staff to navigate it. You know, should you be able to do so.
Paul, would you like to talk about how the Chiefs are great?
do you know what? There was something you said there, and I've never wished for something to happen so much. When you said you sounded like you were last year with the Chargers. Now I really hope the Chiefs have a season like the Chargers next year. Nothing will bring me more joy. It will be up there.
Just bring them down a peg or two, right?
My wedding day, the birth of my 3 children, and the Chiefs not making the playoffs. That would be there with the greatest day of my life, you know. But Max, do you know what, mate? We can't. I can't deny what you said. You know, the Chiefs are incredible. They've had an incredible season. You know, look at the Super Bowl. We watched Jalen Hurts have probably one of the best quarterback performances in a Super Bowl ever.
Yeah.
And still not walk away with the Lombardi Trophy, you know? Andy Reid is a magician. I don't know what he does. I don't know how he does it, but what he does works. It works, and nobody has any clue on how to stop it. You know, nobody understands. I do. I understand. Mark 87. Okay? 87 is going to get the ball. I don't know how many times I need to take. 87 is going to get the ball. But that being said, Andy Reid is incredible. He obviously puts in the effort as well. Like you were saying, he's at the training ground at 4:30 in the morning. He's there late at night. He's got a very understanding wife and family. But he, you know, if I went to work at 4:30 in the morning and came home at 10 o'clock at night, my wife would ask me who I'm having an affair with, you know. but somehow Andy Reid is you know, but he's there. He puts in the effort and he gets results. You know what I mean? He gets results, and it's so easy, you know. It's so easy for when a guy like that is getting this, he's putting this effort in, he's getting these results. It's so easy for him to encourage players to want to play for him. You said this. You said the players want to play for him. You know, we see it. So we obviously all live in the UK, and we all watch the Premiership, and we see it when a manager loses the dressing room and nobody wants to play for him or anything like that.
Yeah.
You know, you've got the complete opposite here. You've got a head coach that is respected by every single one of them players, and every single one of them players is willing to put in a shift for him. And that, you're halfway there. You know what I mean? If you've got, and you know, you've got every player that's wanted to put in a shift for that head coach, you have already, you know, you're already halfway to winning every single game. And then you've got Pat Mahomes leading them. And like you said, another player that is setting up his own OTA camps and everything like that. He's got the backing of all the players during that. You know, I'm not going to slander any QBs, but you know, my team have to put in clauses in contracts to make sure he actually does a bit more revision. I'm not saying that's true. I'm not saying anything like that, but you know, I love Kyler, and I completely respect Kyler as a good QB, but I just don't think he's got the personality or somebody that's going to set up their own OTAs and get the team there with him. You know what I mean? He's a very good quarterback, but like Mahomes is doing this, and it just seems to be levels above people. You know what I mean? It's he's just. I love to watch him play. I love to watch the Chiefs play, and that's the only time you'll ever hear me say that, Mike. So enjoy it. Enjoy it. Enjoy it.
I know. Also, I found out about Patrick Mahomes. I was like, oh, as if he's not talented enough. He always got a photographic memory as well. I only found that out a couple of months ago. So, like any kind of plays Andy Reid draws up, he's literally like memorized. So I'm like, that's just like another layer of that's
so
like,
every team should get 10 points head start because he's cheating.
Yeah, pretty much cheating. Like, even though we like talked about all that, there are some things I am like still concerned about. It is by no means like a perfect team. I am worried about Jawaan Taylor coming in and seemingly being the replacement for Orlando Brown, despite being a right tackle. He's going to have to move over to the left tackle. I've heard that move be described as, suddenly having to wipe your ass with your left hand, right? It just feels a bit odd, right? You're just like, whoa, what is this about? Hopefully don't get any shit anywhere, right? So hopefully that transition will be, smooth. But Jawaan Taylor's a guy that was, a great pass blocker last year. But the first, I think, 3 years of his career, he let 40 sacks on whoever was quarterback at the Jags, which was the worst record in the league. So I'm worried about that. And Lee, obviously, you'll know as well, by the time the Chiefs pick any offensive lineman worth anything, they'll be gone by then in the draft. And even the higher, prospects like I can't even Skoronsky, is that pronounced right? He's more, he's a guy that might end up playing guard anyway. So there's not really anything there to address it in the draft. So he's going to have to be really, really good to come in and play left tackle. Orlando Brown, for all the faults that he has, did a solid job there. There are better left tackles. The issue with him was he wanted to get paid as much money as Trent Williams. He's nowhere near as good as Trent Williams, but that's the money he wanted. And of all the teams he could have gone to get that money, he's gone to the goddamn Bengals, which is just so annoying. So Hannah's obviously going to be very pleased with that, being a Bengals fan. I think he's got like 60 million guaranteed. I mean, good for Orlando Brown. He's got paid, and good for the Bengals. They've got a pretty good left tackle there, which they desperately need. So I'm hoping that does work out, and there isn't like a bit of like slack and just like assuming that Andy Reid will figure it out. And, hopefully it does work out though. And obviously, wide receiver, lost Juju Smith-Schuster. Thankfully, lost McCole Hardman, who's terrible, and lost like a couple of other people too. But I'd love to see, and again, it's hard in the draft, I'd love to see the Chiefs maybe move up and get like a Jordan Addison or somebody like that. Would just be awesome. I also think there's probably a little gap and room for an extra couple of running backs to come in as well, just to shore up that room. So by no means this perfect completed puzzle, but you got to be pretty happy with what's there. Paul, anything to add on any of that?
No, I agree with you. I agree with you that you need another wide receiver. I'd hate to see Jordan Addison there because he'd be so good. Yeah. And it would be frustrating. But the question I was going to fire back at you was the running back room, and you kind of answered it. I was going to say, are you happy going into next season with Isaiah Pacheco as your lead back, or would you rather them draft, say, a Gibbs? I don't think Bijan is anywhere near your.
Don't even tease me with the thought of Jahmyr Gibbs playing over that.
I don't want the Chiefs. I don't want the Chiefs to take any running back because my love was Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and and it was like, oh, he's going to the Chiefs. Oh, he's going to be amazing for fantasy. We should all draft him for fantasy. And I've got so much Clyde Edwards-Helaire now that I can't even give away. Can't even give it away now. But so my question to you, Mags, is what's your dream running back?
I mean, on the fantasy show that I do, I had Garrett Price on from the Dynasty Nerds, and his comp for Jahmyr Gibbs was Jamal Charles. So I was like, you can't say that to me. Like, you can't talk about Jamal Charles to a Chiefs fan and then talk about him potentially like Gibbs coming here. That would be the dream, right? But I don't know. I'm wondering if Brett Veach has been burned before with the Clyde Edwards-Helaire thing, and he's like, actually, let's just roll with Jerick McKinnon. Jerick McKinnon did a really good job, kind of like that sneak. We mentioned that kind of sneaky unsung hero in the Super Bowl where he like gives up that like fame of like telling his grandkids he scored a touchdown in the Super Bowl. He's like, I slid at the 1 yard line in the Super Bowl and won the game, which is a cooler story to tell. Like that's. So I like Jerick McKinnon. I love the violence of Isaiah Pacheco. The way that he runs is brilliant. But I still think, obviously, we brought in what's that guy's name? He's terrible. Ronald Jones, he come in. Melvin Gordon come in. There'll be somebody like that, probably, like a veteran that'll come in and plug some holes. And then maybe you just pick some of these running backs in the later rounds, like some of these rawer talents, like what's he called, Dwayne McBride, people like that are just like these raw kind of guys that can come in and play it down every now and again. But I mean, you got me all excited about Jahmyr Gibbs now. I'm gonna have to stop.
Can I, before you move on, can I just, I forgot to mention this stat that I heard earlier. Patrick Mahomes has more postseason wins than Josh Allen, Deshaun Watson, Lamar Jackson, Derek Carr, Kyler Murray, Tua Tagovailoa, Dak Prescott, Kirk Cousins, Trevor Lawrence, Andy Dalton, and Justin Herbert put together.
That's nice.
He's got 11, and between all of them, they've got 10.
That's pretty cool. I like that.
Don't encourage him. So
that makes me want to cry.
I'm gonna write that on this whiteboard behind me, so I'm gonna forget. That's fantastic. Yeah.
I'll send you
Lee.
After.
Thank you, Lee. Before we ask about predictions, you have anything else to add on what the Chiefs need to improve on? And obviously, you're a big draft guy. Do you think anyone in particular in the draft you're like they would work well at the Chiefs?
I think one thing, just to go back to a point that you made, was obviously about the tackles. It's not just the left tackle that you need to shore up, is it? It's obviously the right side as well. You've got a really nice interior, but shoring up the both tackle spots is a need. Obviously, Juwan Taylor, your hope comes in. I suppose one kind of pick me up I say that I could give you is, and you probably believe this as well, is that Patrick Mahomes' ability to avoid sacks almost means that you don't need to have as good of a tackle pairing than most teams, because he's just so good. And it's one thing that really wrangles me is that you've seen this plenty of times when on third and long, when the Chargers get the Chiefs in third and long, and Patrick Mahomes just runs for it, and it's just like, my God, it's just so annoying. He just wriggles away, and he just gets a third down and absolutely kills you for it. But it's one of those things where at 31 you could be looking at a decent tackle, but you're probably better off looking at more of a developmental tackle, someone like Blake Freeland from BYU or Connor Galvin from Baylor. I like those two guys in the mid rounds, because, like I say, you probably just better loading up on some speed and some weapons and just kind of refreshing that those weapons for Patrick Mahomes a little bit more, because again, you kind of one of those things, isn't it? Because Patrick Mahomes is the multiplier, he makes everything better. You don't need to have the number one wide receiver. That's why you got rid of Tyreek Hill and got better.
I like that nickname, by the way, the Multiplier. That's I want to say that's more. So let's get.
We shouldn't really encourage you, should we? That's the thing.
it's better than that one for Micah Parsons, though, isn't it?
No, that's the best one. So, Lee, we have a nickname for Micah Parsons, which is the laxative, because he makes people shit themselves.
I mean, it's very true, to be fair. It's very,
I love
true.
that one.
Very true.
Right, Lee, we'll pitch the predictions to you first then. Chiefs record last year was pretty good, 14-3, right? Do you think they'll do better or worse than that? And who's going to be, who's going to be the MVP? Come on.
Well, I'm not going to stick my neck on the line too much. I'm going to say the MVP is Patrick Mahomes. But record-wise, I think you'll drop a couple more games than that, because I think, again, like I said before, you've got a tough schedule. You've got the Bills, you've got the Dolphins, you've got a couple of games against ourselves, the Bengals, and obviously the Super Bowl rematch as well against the Eagles, which I can't wait to see. So, to go through that sort of gauntlet, plus the rest of the schedule as well, and not drop more than 4 or 5 wins, then I think you're going to drop a couple. Probably still win the AFC West, but I think we'll push you a little bit harder for it this time around.
Nice. Paul?
I do agree. I think it's always difficult. I say this every time. It's always difficult to predict a team to go better than 14 wins. So I'm going to say you're going to do worse, if not the same. It's going to be one of them. And if I wasn't going to say anyone but Mahomes, I'd be ridiculous here, wouldn't I? If the Chiefs are going to get 15 wins, there's only one person that's going to be your MVP, isn't it? And his name rhymes with Jerick McKinnon.
I'm going to say the Chiefs do better. 17-0 seems about right.
Heard it here first, guys.
Paul, you need to clip that and then just back to him in about a year.
And MVP, if it's not Patrick Mahomes, it'll be Jahmyr Gibbs, right?
He's
right.
in love.
Right, boys, let's ride. Broncos time. Finished 5-12. Good Lord. Lee, we're actually gonna pitch to Paul first. So, Paul, what went well for the Broncos? All right, so that was pretty good. Lee, what do you think they can improve? No, Paul, what went well for the Broncos this year?
I don't know.
You were right the first time, if I'm honest.
I genuinely don't know.
Yeah.
You know, there is even when you're trying to look for something good, Jerry Judy's at the team.
For now.
For how long?
They drafted. Help me with his surname. Greg Dulcich.
Dulcich. Yeah, he's good.
You know what I mean. He had a decent season. He started to progress towards the end. I think that's about it, really. There really isn't much to talk about, is there? You know, I can't even say they traded for Russell Wilson because I think Russell Wilson is a phenomenal QB, but I think it was a really bad trade. I think they gave up too much for him, you know. But and
Lee, do you
have
nothing else?
I'll give one positive because like we all are, we're really scraping the barrel. Patrick Surtain became one of the best corners in the NFL, and I think that's here to stay as well. So you've got one player on defense that you can really build around, you know, and that's come to the fore for the Broncos this year. Aside from that, though, like you say, there's not a lot of great there, but that's one thing. And I guess, you know, if we move into this season, I guess you could say that Sean Payton is obviously a massive upgrade at head coach, but you know, in a division that's so tough, how, you know, is that going to actually have the benefit that it would do in a lesser division? I don't know.
Yeah, the one thing I actually wanted to dig into a bit is we've spoke about it a few times about, you know, is Russell Wilson like the worst trade in NFL history? And it seems to be that there's like one other trade that really sticks out with the Herschel Walker trade. But I mean, the more I look into this Russell Wilson one, I'm like, this is a terrible trade. Jeff Bell, who you guys might know for whom J Bell tolls on Twitter, he put out a stat that in week 12 of the NFL season, among the 32 quarterbacks, Russell Wilson was ranked 33rd. I was like, how do you do that? There's only 32 teams. And he was ranked the 33rd best quarterback in week 12, which is amazing. Like, but with the Herschel Walker trade, at least the Vikings made the playoffs that year. Like, the Denver Broncos got worse after trading for Russell Wilson. The Seahawks drafted incredibly well with the picks that they got for Wilson. And now the Broncos are kind of stuck in this cap hell. So while it's like, with the Herschel Walker trade that kind of built a dynasty of the Cowboys, and like it's kind of hard to say that it was worse than that. But it's not that far off. Lee, what do you think?
This is also getting worse as well because obviously the Seahawks pick number 5 and they're not done using those picks, but it's horrendous. You know, it costs a lot. His contract's horrendous. The Seahawks are still going to make hay with those picks, and because you know they drafted really well, as you mentioned. And Russ was a dumpster fire, so you know it's only going to get worse. And at the end of the day, they're talking about you know Peyton, and they've got Joe Lombardi as their offensive coordinator now, which makes me laugh. And they're talking about making it a run-first offense. When you're paying the dude like whatever he's been paid, like $250 million or whatever they extended him to be a run-first QB into his mid-30s, then that's not a great allocation of resources, both in financial terms and also draft capital. You know, and then you come into a division, like we said before, with Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, and you know the Raiders are potentially going to draft someone in the next year or so as well, who he'll have to battle against well into his 30s. You know, the arrow's pointing down where the arrow's pointing up for everyone else. So yeah, this is a franchise setting back sort of trade, I would say, for quite a big price for the Broncos for sure for years to come.
Yeah, absolutely. Not to mention their running backs injured as well, right? They're going to be run first without their best running back.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
That's crazy. Paul, obviously they got loads to work on. What really stands out to you apart from obviously Russell Wilson needs to play better, right?
Yeah, so I just wanted to remind people that the Russell Wilson and the Broncos got Russell Wilson and a 2022 4th round pick, which they selected defensive tackle, and then the Broncos sent Seattle their 1st round picks in 22 and 23, 2nd round picks in 22, 23, a 5th round pick in 22, plus quarterback Drew Lock, tight end Noah Fant, and defensive end Shelby Harris. Okay. And I forgot how bad that was. Okay. That's really bad. So, like you're saying, Lee, how they've still got their 1st round, they've still got a 2nd round from the Seahawks. Have got a 1st and 2nd round pick in this draft from the Broncos, you know?
Yeah.
And so the Seahawks worry me for the future. You know what I mean? They're building a right little franchise there. But I am going to try and spin this in a bit of a positive way towards the Broncos, because all we've done is say how bad they are and how bad everything is. Okay. Let's not forget that Russell Wilson is actually a really good QB. We've seen him be a really good QB. Yeah. He can be a really good QB. You know, I can see you disagreeing with me there a little bit, Lee, you know.
On the latest evidence, I'm not sure. But yeah, historically, for sure, I can definitely agree. But
he has been. That's what I'm saying. He has been a really good QB. You know, two words about the Broncos last year: Nathaniel Hackett. Okay. This year you've got Sean Payton. Now, Sean Payton is a really, really good head coach. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying he's going to turn this team into anything special. You know, you can't polish a turd at the end of the day. And that's what the Broncos are at the moment. They're awful. You're not going to do that straight away. And they've given up so many picks in this trade that they're actually not going to turn it around. But if ever anyone was going to start that rebuild and look to the future, say 2, maybe 3 years time, and have a really good team, Sean Payton is the guy to do that. Okay. He is going to turn this Broncos team around. He will get them playing, you know. They've got a couple of good running backs. I know you're saying that Javonte Williams is currently injured, but they've just signed Samaje Perine, who we saw at the Bengals. He actually stepped up and was a really good running back, you know. So he'll be holding the fort down until, I'm not 100% sure when Javonte Williams comes back, but we've seen Javonte Williams is a really good running back as well. You know, they've got, I know you're saying about how long Jerry Jeudy's going to be there, but they've got Jerry Jeudy, they've got Cortland Sutton, they've got Tim Patrick, you know, who I think are actually half decent wide receivers. They've got a great tight end, as I said, in Greg Dulcich, and not for fantasy, but Albert O, you know, we all failed in that in fantasy. So I think they've actually not got a bad offensive team. They need to work on their O-line. They need to work on, like you said, they've got that cornerback that they can build around in the defense. They've got a few things that they need to do, but they've got a starting point. They've got a starting point, and they've got a great head coach. I think they're heading in the right direction.
Nice. So let's see if why don't we roll right into your prediction then, Paul? You think obviously they're going to do better than next year?
I didn't say that. I said the year after. Okay, I said 2024. I said they're headed in the right direction. Again, five wins is you know what I mean. We're talking 6 or 7. They're pushing the top end of that table towards the playoffs. You know, and do you know what? I put my money where my mouth is. Yes, I think they have a better record. And I think that Russell Wilson is their MVP.
Nice. I think they might do better as well, actually. Maybe just. But I'm going to go with Pat Surtain. I think he's going to be their MVP. Lee, what do you think?
No, I think this is heading backwards. I think it's like Paul said, really, it's going to take a couple of years to come to fruition. They've got some decent pieces. You know, like I said, we've kind of ran through them. Paul did a really good job at running through them. But, you know, when your starting point is where it is, and then you've got 2 teams that are really, really far ahead, plus, like I say, the Raiders are a bit of a wild card as well. And they've still got, you know, the sort of schedule that we've been talking about all the way through for the AFC West, because it's going to be tough for the whole division schedule-wise. I just don't think they've got enough of a starting point. I don't think Russ is... I don't have the faith that Paul does have in Russ anymore. I think he's like I said before, the arrow is certainly pointing downwards. I just don't think they're going to be very good. You know, it might be a couple of years, because, like I say, they've not got that first and second round pick in the draft to kind of give themselves that boost either. So their reinforcements are not coming for another year or so. So I think it could be a down year. Peyton, he's there for the long term, so I don't think he is going to be under any pressure to deliver this year. And they'll have to eat a bunch dead cat, but they could get rid of Russ after this year for a lot less than they can now. So I think he might ride with him for a year and maybe jettison him after 12 months if it's not going well, and then then the rebuild can almost begin properly in earnest when they get those picks back and they got their full quota again. But no, I think they're going to take a step backwards. I think they'll be potentially one of the worst teams in the league next year.
Nice. And who you got for their MVP?
Oh, Pat Surtain. He's a superstar. Like I said, I can't really say Russell Wilson, even though the MVP is usually a quarterback, because he's the best player on the team. And like I said, I think he's going to be one to build around for sure.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. And we got 10 minutes left to talk about the Raiders. So I'll talk about a wee bit what went well. They went 6-11. I mean, Max Crosby's the huge standout for them from last year. Just loved watching that guy play. He was just constant threat. Thought it was nice to see Josh Jacobs finally, get his flowers a little bit, like be used in the way that, everybody was screaming for him to be used as for years. So it was nice to see that for sure. Weirdly enough, I actually thought that Derek Carr and Devontae Adams were linking up quite nicely, but that's gone. So can't really say too much about that. I just think a lot of things that went well was like fine, but we'll get onto a bit more. And Lee, maybe you can weigh in a little bit about this. Derek Carr, from the Raiders' perspective, they seem to put a lot of the blame on Derek Carr. I thought that was maybe kind of harsh. What did you think of the whole situation with the Raiders?
I think it just ran its course. I think that relationship, that cycle had come to an end. I think it's one of those things where obviously he was very, very invested, emotionally so, as we saw a few times on the podium after games. But he was never able to get them over the hump. They put his best friend with him, to support him. Like you say, they got the best year of Josh Jacobs out of him that they might ever see. Do you know what I mean? He might have peaked last year and that might be the best it's going to be, but it just wasn't enough. They weren't able to get over the hump. So I think, when you've not got a guy, what do you need to do? You need to go in search of one. And, they've not done that immediately with Jimmy Garoppolo, but I think he's a bridge to bigger things and better things, and that might come in a few weeks' time, or it might come in 12 months. But obviously, the Raiders are in the quarterback market now, so yeah, it's a difficult one. But I think that, like I say, it must have been difficult emotionally for everyone involved. Carr himself and the team. But I think that just came to an end, and maybe he was a convenient scapegoat, as you kind of hinted at. But he's not there now, and they're going in separate directions, for better or worse. Yeah.
Paul, what did you think about the Raiders season? Anything you thought stood out for them?
Yeah, it was weird, wasn't it? It was a weird season because there was times where they looked half decent. There was times where they looked like a team that were garbage. But I kind of agree with what you were saying, Mags. I feel like they ended up having a really bad season and just turned around and went, Derek Carr, you're the problem here. Where I don't think he was, and I don't think. I couldn't have thought of another player that is so the same as Derek Carr to Jimmy Garoppolo. You know what I mean? It's not like they've gone, we want a better QB here. It's like you've just got the same QB, just better looking. Doesn't wear eyeshadow or whatever it is. It looks like he's got around his eyes every time. But it was like, I don't understand it. I don't understand the move, Is Jimmy G going to have that connection with Devontae Adams? Yeah, you said it yourself. We've seen it a few times where they had this connection and it thought like it was going quite well. Is Jimmy G going to have that same thing? Is it a right move? Leah, I don't know if you'll be able to answer this. Do you think that the Raiders go QB in the draft?
I think they could do. I think they're a sneaky team to trade up potentially from 7. There's obviously a lot of noise and smoke around that. The teams involved and things like that. I think. Like I said before, they're definitely in the market. Jimmy G's not the answer. He's very similar, like you say, to Carr in a lot of regards. But I think, like I said, that relationship had just come to an end, I think, in one way or another. So you move on, you get someone who's a safe pair of hands. Unlike a couple of teams, they've got a starter. No matter what happens, it puts them under no pressure in the draft. If no one falls to them or they can't find a trade partner, if they do want to trade up, then they can always have a do-over to next year and enter the sweepstakes when it's probably a better QB class anyway. So they kind of got that flexibility, which is what you want. As a GM going into the draft, you want flexibility. You don't want to be backed into a corner. But I do think that they could go up there. I think they're kind of the franchise that are going to look at the division and think, well, we don't really have a horse who can run with these guys right at the top of the division first and foremost, and that's the easiest route into the playoffs, right? So I think they're gonna look to maybe bring in someone like Anthony Richardson if they can trade up, on draft night or maybe before. We'll see, but yeah, I think they could be one to watch for sure in the top 10.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think they'll try to make a move, and yeah, if you're right, if they can't quite, I think that's Jimmy G's. He's the insurance policy, right? They'll happily go with him. And Lee, we'll pitch it to you first. Then, how do you think they're going to do next year? Will they do better or worse? And who's going to be their MVP?
I think they'll be quite similar. I think they'll be 6-7 win team. They might be slightly better because the Broncos will be slightly worse. That might balance itself out a little bit. Still got tough schedules, we've been saying all the way through the pod, so it's tough to kind of say that they're going to improve loads, especially because their roster. I just think it's in a little bit of flux. Like you say, the quarterback move doesn't really move the needle. They brought in a couple of other guys, but again, not needle movers. Jacoby Myers might be a good signing because he's familiar with Josh McDaniels and might bring some comfort, but then it kind of like takes away Hunter Renfrow because they're going to be doing a lot of the same things. So, if it's fantasy guys, you're kind of thinking, who's the guy to pick here? Because it's like, it's whether it's going to be that familiarity or the guy who's been doing it for so many years in that offense. I don't know. So we'll see. But yeah, I think they're going to be slightly better, maybe exactly the same. I don't know. But I don't expect them to be kind of pulling up any trees. Let's put it that way. MVP wise, it's tough to look beyond Devontae Adams. If Jimmy G can just get to him, he's an accurate quarterback and he can do some things, especially in the play action game, which should work really nicely with Josh Jacobs. You're going to use one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, aren't you? So Devontae Adams is probably going to be my MVP.
Makes sense. Paul?
So I think they're going to do worse because the Broncos are going to do better. Just to level that off, really. But yeah, I think they're going to be in a right mess this year. I think they're going to struggle with Jimmy G. He's not the answer, and I honestly can't see them trading up in the draft. I think there's other teams that are more desperate that are willing to pay more than what they are. So I don't think they're going to trade up, but I think Jimmy G is going to be their QB this year, and I don't think he's going to be that good, to be honest. I think you may see Jimmy G for what he really is. At San Fran, he had one of the best O-lines in the league. And now all of a sudden you go into somebody that's got quite a bad O-line. I'm not saying they're the worst, but you've got quite a bad O-line. You might start to see Jimmy G for his true colours, So I'm going to say that they're going to do worse, but it's difficult to look past Devontae Adams as MVP. If they can turn it on, he is their MVP. But for me, they're going to do worse, and I'm going to say Max Crosby's their MVP next year because I love him.
I'm going to say exactly the same as you, Paul. I'm going to say they're going to do worse, and I'm going to go Max Crosby as well. I just think he's
smart,
just a bit of a force to be reckoned with, and I just think he's going to have a good season if the Raiders are going to have a good season. But I can see them slipping just a little bit. They got a bit of work to do. And that brings us to the end of the show, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. Lee, thanks again for joining us. Make sure you're all following over on Twitter at Wakefield90. Make sure you come and join us as well next week, where we're going to continue with our divisional breakdowns. And we'll see you guys then. Bye.